In my whopping 23 years of life and in the church, I have seen many churches bicker, divide, and split, and hurt very many members within the congregation and the community over issues that are considered either not our way or just a different view than what the general majority holds. I believe that it is past time for Christians in the church to realize that tolerance, in most cases, is not what we perceive it to be. I do not mean that we should conform or let sin not be recognized as what it is, but we need to show the sinner that we care. I want to start my presentation by showing a short video clip.
I think that we live in a society that does call us to be able to engage those that we live with. I think that's true anywhere. The word tolerant is thrown around so much. And the problem that I have with the word tolerant is it typically does not mean respectful of an individual. It means embracing of an ideology. Again, it leads to this pluralistic mindset which says, not just can't we all get along in civility, it leads to this thing that says, your religion's not any better than mine, and when you say that yours is better than mine, then you're intolerant and you're a hater, you're a bigot. Well, you have to understand, again, Christians ought to be the most loving people. When people think of love, they ought to think of followers of Jesus Christ. That ought to be the first frame of reference in our tone, in our conduct. But let me say unquestionably, undeniably, when people think of commitment to the Bible, they often think of Christians. And the Bible very clearly articulates that Jesus Christ is the King. There's no other God beside him. He sits on the throne. He stands in the solitude of himself. He doesn't sit at the table with Muhammad and Buddha and all of the other gods, the 300 million Hindu gods. This is not some big meeting they're all having. Christ sits on the throne. And we can, as Christians, take him off of the throne to appear civil. Yes, we're respectful of individuals because they're created in the image of God, and Jesus died for all men. No, we do not embrace any thought that would exalt itself against Christ. As a matter of fact, Scripture says we're to cast it down and to bring it into captivity of Christ.
When discussing any topic, the key terms that surround the situation need to be openly defined. And the key terms that I find that need to be addressed in the situation of Christian tolerance are tolerance, for one. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines tolerance as a sympathy or indulgence for beliefs, practices that differ or conflict from one's own. Dictionary.com says a fair, objective, permissive attitude towards those whose opinions, practices, race, religion, nationality, etc. differ from one's own. From this definition of tolerance, we can infer that tolerance is to give respect or consideration for an opinion that is different from the one that we hold. Another term that I feel needs to be defined is acceptance. Merriam-Webster defines acceptance as an agreeing, either expressively or by conduct to the act of another. And Dictionary.com says it is favorable reception, approval, or favor. From these definitions, I can conclude that evidence would support that acceptance is the agreement between two parties on a specific topic. Next, when talking about Christian tolerance, as the video discussed, we as Christians should show love. Our society throws around many definitions of love today, but I wanted to look at what the dictionary defines love as. Merriam-Webster says love is a feeling of strong or constant affection for a person. Dictionary.com says it is a feeling of warm personal attachment or a deep affection, as for a parent, child, or friend. From these definitions, we can infer that love is the extreme of like. And finally, we need to define love's antonym, hate. Merriam-Webster defines hate as intense hostility or aversion. And Dictionary.com defines hate as to dislike intensely or passionately, feel extreme aversion for an extreme hostility toward or detest. In other words, it's extreme dislike. Since the key terms surrounding Christian tolerance have been defined, and since the key word is Christian tolerance, we need to look at what the Bible says. The first verse I would like to look at is Ephesians 4:2. With all humility and gentleness, with patience showing tolerance for one another in love. This verse tells me that I am to show tolerance for others in love. From the definitions that I have recently defined, I am to give respect and consideration to all people and show them that I like them greatly. Another chapter of the Bible I would like to look at is Romans 14. This chapter talks about the strong brother versus the weaker brother. In most instances, when speaking of Christian tolerance, you have a situation of where you have a stronger brother and a weaker brother. Someone who God has maybe not given the same light on a topic as he has given you. And in that case, you need to do what is respectful to them and what is respectful to God by upholding your standards and beliefs and not pushing them on the other person until God is ready to show them light. The next verse I'd like to look at is John 8:7. But when they pressed in asking him, he straightened up and he said to them, Let he who is without sin cast. Let he who is among you let him be the first to throw a stone at her. I don't know how many times I've heard this brought up during different arguments. And it's more of a snappy comeback these days than it's actually using biblical truth, which I think is really sad in and of itself. But Jesus was making a point that everyone has sinned, and that we should not cast judgment or punishment on each other, because God is the only person who's given authority to give judgment. God is the only person that knows the inward nature of that person. My mind also goes to Acts 10:28. Acts 10:28 says, And he said to them, You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a man who is a Jew to associate with a foreigner, or to visit him. And yet God has shown me that I should not call any man unholy or unclean. In modern days, that foreigner could be a member of the gay community, an unwed mother, a drug dealer. And while we know that these peoples are sinners in every sense of the word, it is not for us to label them. It is for us to show them the love of Jesus. A few months back, I heard a sermon from a pastor who was openly bashing the gay community. And his reference text was Deuteronomy 13:6-10. Which states, If your brother, your mother's son, or your son or daughter, or the wife you cherish, or your friend who is your own soul, entice you secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, whom neither of you nor your fathers have known, of the gods of the peoples who are around you, near you, far from one end of the earth to the other end. You shall not yield to him or listen to him, and your eyes shall not pity him, nor shall you spare or conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to put him to his death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. So you shall stone him to the death, because he has sought to seduce you from the Lord your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. This pastor was actually suggesting that we should shun the gay community from our churches, from our homes, and from our society. While I do believe that being gay is somewhat of a trend for a lot of people, I don't think those who are properly trained will catch it. This verse does have a Good point. We should not follow those that try to lead us astray, but we shouldn't push them from the truth because of our hatred. We should welcome them into our churches so that they can hear what Jesus has to say, not push them out. I would also like to look at Matthew 7, verse 12, which says, "In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you would want them to treat you, for this is the law and the prophets." If you were in the position of that sinner that wants to come to your church, or the person that isn't doing exactly what you think should be doing, how would you want them to treat you? I can't count the number of times I've heard people call Christians hypocrites. Do you want to be called a hypocrite? Because I sure don't. I can change this by practicing the love of Jesus in which I preach. And the final verse I would like to look at is Romans 16:17. "Now I urge you, brethren, keep your eye on those who cause disincisions and hindrances contrary to the teachings of which you learned, and turn away from them." This passage tells me to see those who are in position to hurt my walk with Christ and to turn away from them. This does not mean that I should never try to convert a sinner, but that if I have a close friend or anyone in my life, even another Christian, that is hurting my relationship with Jesus, I need to distance myself from that person. This does not mean that I treat them with unkindness or any disrespect. It means that I see myself in this situation as the weaker brother, and I need to put my commitment to Jesus above and stand close to in a relationship with him above my friend. I can still be their friend. I can still have conversations with them. But our relationship cannot be as close as it once was. It needs to be a little more distance. After definitions are established, and the Bible's commands have been revealed, the final thing to uncover is how Christian tolerance should appear. What is the difference between loving thy neighbor and accepting thy neighbor's sins? I feel that I am leading a pretty good example of this in my own relationship with my sisters. I have 3 younger sisters, and our outlooks on life are very different. My older of the younger sisters is an unwed mother, who the father is unknown. One of the younger ones is a lesbian, and the other one is a single mother, raising a child of a man that is well known for doing drugs. And she herself is in a very dangerous situation with drugs. I love my sisters with all my heart, and they each know how I feel about their lifestyle choices. But they also know that I love them and would do anything for them. I have given them each my beliefs and opinions, book, chapter, and verse, if you will. I invite them to church, and I pray for them. I try my hardest to be the example of Jesus that they need. It is hard to see my sisters living a life of sin, and it would be so hard to push them away knowing that they will go to hell when they die. I want to spend all eternity with Jesus, and I want my family to as well. In order to do this, I must witness to them. I must let my life show that I believe what I'm saying. They may never read a book of the Bible, but they are seeing my life, which might have a glimpse of the story it contains of redemption. There are 3 questions you must ask yourself concerning Christian tolerance. Are my actions Christ-like? How would I react if this role was reversed? And am I showing all involved in the situation that above all else, Jesus and I love them? If you could answer these questions, I would suggest you're living a biblically tolerant life. Christian tolerance is not about dropping standards and conforming to the world, but showing the world that God has a perfect plan for his creation, and that sin entered the world and destroyed that perfect plan. God had a plan B, and that plan is forgiveness through his son Jesus. Christian tolerance is standing up for biblical principles while still showing others the Bible standard and that you love them. The most important thing to remember is that someone is judging Jesus by how you judge them.